welcome to Modern Impressionist Magazine Artist Feature. Today we're joined by Jim McVicker, award-winning artist, just really a legend in the community, and his ability to capture just the atmosphere of a place is incredible, and just his work is incredible. Jim, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael. My pleasure.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited to have you on. You're one of the most incredible painters out there today, just with how you can capture your so many different things. You have your figurative painting, which is very detailed and impressive. I love your blanket scenes where you have like a blanket, there's a blanket in the scene. I mean, you can almost feel it. And then I love your foggy or hazy atmospheric plein air effects that you get in your plein air work. And I actually even appreciate
a lot of
that. Northern California, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
near
Eureka.
Yeah.
South of Eureka or
South
okay.
Of it,
Yeah. I went up to Redwoods National Park before, so I've driven like the Avenue of Giants, and then I've kind of gone through Eureka and then up that way, and it's just it's really unique to, I think, anywhere else in the country.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, that's what drew me up here.
Yeah.
Once I came to visit, I was pretty well hooked fairly quickly after one weekend's visiting friends.
Oh, one weekend visit, really? And you?
Yeah. I came up to visit and just was struck with the area and not only the beauty of the area, but it had a real working class feel, which I liked. And there were a number of artists here. I mean, even more so now than back when I came up here. But it's a great art community.
Oh,
too.
Yeah. I know Ryan Jensen is in the area there, and I don't know. You said you used to work with George Van Hook. I don't know if he's still in the area.
Yeah. No, he lives back east now, upstate New York. But he was here when I first moved here, and probably met him. Within the first year or so that I lived here.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah, that's and that's it. That'll be interesting to talk about as well. So, kind of leading towards that is when did you decide? So you decided after a weekend of visiting. What year was this? Where you decided to go up there and visit?
Well, that was 1977.
Okay.
But I was living in Santa Cruz. I left Southern California, where I grew up, in 1975. I think it was the summer of 75, and moved up to Santa Cruz, California. I always loved the north part of the state. I had a cousin that lived in Alameda, and always liked it when we went up to visit. And somehow at a relatively young age, maybe 14, 15 years old, I knew at some point I wanted to leave Southern California for the northern part of the state. And when I started painting, which was really, I was not doing art as a kid. I did, things in class, any art classes we may have had. I kind of got into ceramics a fair amount in high school, and a little bit in college, but it was really after all of that. I was 21, and I traveled. I was dating a woman who's still a really good friend of both my wife and myself, Missy Vivenzio, fantastic artist. And she had a great art history book that I started looking at. I was taking some classes part-time at the college and working. And so I'm looking through this art history book, and I'm seeing, for the first time in my life that I recall, I never remembered seeing this as a kid or in my teens, never went to a museum, but I'm seeing this French Impressionist paintings. And in particular, I was struck with Monet and Pissarro and Sicily. And I was just enamored with it. And my friend Missy, gave me some acrylic paints, and I started doing copies of some of the Impressionist paintings. The very first thing I copied was maybe more of a post-impressionist, but was Toulouse-Lautrec, a figure piece
Yeah.
he had. And from there, I did some copies of Sisley and Pissarro and a little bit of Monet. But I just became enamored with landscape painting. I'd never seen anything quite like it that just felt so authentic and real to me. And it wasn't. I didn't really visit museums as a kid, but everything I feel like I used to see seemed dark and religious and
Right.
something that just was not of interest to me.
Yeah, it didn't resonate.
And so I spent, I continued working. My girlfriend and I parted ways, but I continued painting and I was working a job, and I just started saving money. And in 1975, I'd only been painting for 2 years
Wow.
at best. My work was really good,
Yeah.
but I just said, that's it. This is what I'm
Wow.
going to do. And I quit my job. I had saved about $5,000
That's awesome.
in 1975. That was a lot
Yeah.
more than what
Yeah.
it's worth now. And I had a friend in Santa Cruz, needed a roommate, and I moved up
Oh,
there
wow.
and started painting full time. Met a couple of painters, but nobody really doing landscape
Yeah.
painting, which was what I was interested in. So I did landscape painting, but then I also started looking at American abstract
Mhm.
painting, particularly Impressionist painters. And I kind of brought that into my work and doing more things out of my head and kind of combining the landscape with a little bit of that expressionist quality. And then I also went out and did landscapes on location around Santa Cruz. Not a lot of them, but I was still getting out and
Yeah.
doing that. And I came up to visit friends here in Humboldt County in
Uh-huh.
Eureka. I'd been in Santa Cruz about a year and a half and loved
Yeah.
the area. And they needed a roommate, so I left Santa Cruz for Eureka. And in not much time, plus I went to a couple galleries here, and I saw a couple of painters in one gallery, and one of them in particular, Curtis Otto,
Mhm.
who later became a really good friend and influential in my work, was a landscape
Okay.
painter
Yeah.
and figurative. Did everything from life. And I met Curtis and also met some people that were running a life drawing group. And I started going to life drawing. I'd been drawing in Southern California at the college, but now I was joining this group that was doing life drawing. And there I met George Van Hook and another artist, remarkable artist, James Moore, and Curtis Otto, of course, and a few other
Yeah.
artists. But those three in particular had a major impact on my life and my outlook of painting. They were all going out and painting the landscape, or they were painting the
Mhm.
model, or they were painting lives. And they invited me to join them to paint landscapes as well.
That's
And
great.
Van Hook and I literally probably painted seriously all day, every day together for at least 2, if not going on
Wow.
3 years. And we shared a studio for a bit. I moved to the little town he was in, Arcata, just north of Eureka. And I had a little studio there, a nice-sized studio that I also lived at, but it was $50
Yeah.
a month. I mean, that, and it had no hot water, no shower, had a toilet, and a hot plate. That's it. So it was the classic starving artist. But it was a great space, and Van Hook and I were, I mean, happy as could be. I really didn't care. It was a place to paint. I was young, and but that was where I felt there were a couple good teachers at the community college I went to in Southern California. One in particular, Tony Ivins, was a landscape painter. But nobody was really teaching any real fundamentals about painting.
Okay.
But they encouraged me to go outdoors and paint because they knew I really liked
Yeah.
landscape painting and liked.
And this was probably at a
Impressionist.
time when abstract painting was really kind of coming into vogue.
Oh, it was. I mean, yeah, it already kind of was. And one of the teachers I had was an abstract
Yeah.
painter, and so I started doing some more abstract type
Yeah.
pieces. Uh, but when I came up here, and then I met another painter just before I left Southern California, Jim
Uh-huh.
Gandy, and Jim was an expressionist painter that did the figure, did the landscape. Um, Rarely completely non-objective, but he did get into that as well. But meeting him in the beginning, I walked into the house, apartment him and his wife rented in Southern
Yeah.
California, and it was, I've never seen anything like. I mean, paintings were
Yeah.
everywhere, and his easel was set up right by a little balcony that was a deck, and he would paint on that deck,
Oh.
and sometimes paint. Other times it just
Yeah.
anyway, he was what I would say was the first really big influence on
Oh,
my
wow.
work, and made me realize there were people out there, because I didn't know
Yeah.
anybody that was, I knew people that did some painting, but I didn't know anybody that was fully committed
Right.
to it.
Yeah.
And so that was a great eye opener, and gave me a little sense of confidence.
Yeah.
Because I quit the job and I decided this is what I'm going to
Yeah.
do. And I still remember when I'm working on the first painting, when I had quit my job and I got to Santa Cruz, and I'm working on that painting, and I remember the thought came to my mind, oh my God, you really going to be able to do this thing
Yeah.
you wanted to?
Yeah.
But I never
He-
looked back. I'm not sure where it came from, but I had a certain sense of confidence
Yeah.
that everything would fall in
Yeah.
line.
And things would just
so to
come
speak.
about to where what you would sell through galleries at that point, or were you selling?
No, I wasn't, not at all. I had a little show in Santa Cruz at a theater. In fact, the first show I had at a gallery, it was a two-story house that the downstairs was a
Oh.
gallery, and the owner and his wife lived upstairs. And he I don't remember how he saw my work. I think he saw it at the theater where I was
Yeah.
showing it, and offered me a show, and we met. I even did a painting of him and his wife, and he was a character. Interesting guy, a painter himself. But at the opening, I didn't realize he was an alcoholic, and I bought and made it a huge punch that was full of vodka and all this stuff. And by the time I got to the opening, he had drank the
Oh,
whole
man.
thing,
Oh, man.
and he was having seizures.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Jeez.
it was crazy. It was absolutely
I mean,
crazy, and really only a few people came to the opening anyway. But my mother showed up.
Jeez.
She flew up from Southern California to come to my first show, and I'm out on the deck having a cigarette I smoked at the time, and I'm drinking, going, "Oh my God, this is a wreck." And here comes my mother with my cousin and her husband, and she went to their house, and they drove down about an hour from where they lived, and I saw her, which was a great feeling. But I said, "Oh, Mom, I got to let you know, I've been drinking. The guy who owns this place is drunk.
Yeah.
It's a disaster. I don't even know if you want to. Oh, let me go in
Yeah.
and look around." So she did, and then they took me out for a
Oh,
real nice
that's-
dinner.
That's
So
at least there was a nice dinner at the end of what was probably a
oh yeah,
tough day.
and her and my father weren't too crazy about me being a painter in the beginning and quitting the job
Yeah,
and everything and leaving.
That seems like parents.
So it wasn't the best introduction to the art world
Yeah.
for her.
Yeah,
anyway.
well, yeah, parents have their reservations, and then that being the first one that they see.
Yeah.
And even through all that, though, you still had this firm conviction to be a painter. So you must have, were you, because I know there's a lot of people out there who are probably getting to that point where they're hoping to make that leap to a full-time painter, or they're looking to start selling their paintings. And I guess what advice would you give them to keep their conviction, or what helped you keep your conviction to, to keep going, even though it might start off a little rocky?
It was, I think first off, I would say it was each painting to me seemed to blossom a little bit of what I knew and was trying to do. and I absolutely loved it. When I started painting, I, I was at a point in my life, which a lot of people are in their when they're off to
Yeah.
college and after college, they're in their early 20s. I was 21, 22, where I was very discouraged with trying to figure out what I
Yeah.
wanted to do.
Yeah.
What was going to connect with me, and that's why when I did those first paintings, it was seriously like a lightning
Wow.
bolt hit me.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was alive for the first time in my life to something that had a real meaning to me, and that felt tangible, something I could taste and touch
Yeah.
and smell and make this thing that I could look at. Whether it was a good painting or not didn't really matter. I was excited by it, and so I think the hardest thing is, I always say, I mean, I take more breaks now than I used to, and age is probably part of that. But in that time, I would say, God, I'm afraid to stop, or I might not get started again. I always felt like that was the thing of just putting those first strokes on the canvas,
even getting the paint
really,
down on your palette, and
I think now there's a lot of opportunities for young artists to study with a lot of terrific painters out there, and that can be a real boost to your education with painting and trying to figure out what it is you want to do. I don't know if I would have taken the opportunity had I known about it even back then. We didn't have that kind of thing back then, but I had a certain stubbornness about myself and a certain conviction to wanting to plow through this thing and make my own mistakes and my own discoveries. Looked at a lot of art. I read a lot about the artists in history that I liked, and I rarely looked at contemporary art. I would pick up an American Artist magazine or a Art News or something like that, and but my focus was buying art books and looking at all the great artists that I've loved in the past, and going to museums. I never, it's weird, I never felt, because I've talked to artists that somehow feel intimidated by what they see in a museum because it's so overwhelmingly great. And I didn't, certainly we make comparisons of ourselves to other artists or art and history and where do we fit in. And I certainly have done that. But I know when I went to the museums and looked at the work, and I even did copies in the museums at the Met. Van Hook and I went there in 1980, and I did some copies of Rembrandt and Frans Hals, maybe about 5 or 6 paintings.
Oh, wow.
Which was a phenomenal experience. And I would advise anybody, if they want to really study a painting and learn something about that artist. My copying wasn't trying to duplicate their style of painting or their manner of, but to use it as an instructional way to see how they dealt with form and light and dark values, the drawing of it, all of that stuff.
No, that's a really interesting.
It was
actually, the funny thing is, I had another artist, actually Karl Ma, who said that he started out he wanted to paint the masterpieces, and then he would trying to paint them. So that was like another exercise that he instinctually was called to as a child. So it's interesting that you were doing a similar practice, and maybe beneficial to all of us to do that.
I think it is. And I can't emphasize enough about painting from life. That changed I started painting from life, started painting the landscape, then I got away from it, was doing more of these abstract type ideas. And then when I moved up here and met Van Hook and Otto and more. They were all painting from life, and I was and draw, as painters say. It's just true. Drawing the figure made everything else I painted better, and the better I got at figure drawing, better my work got. And then going out with even if you're not doing it on an instructional manner of learning from somebody, just going out with friends, painters that you know that are better than how you paint. That's the way it was with Van Hook and Moore and Otto. They were all much better painters than I was in terms of painting from life and painting what's out there. And so when I started painting with them and just being out there, ask a question or two, but just seeing how they laid the paint down, how they were doing something. My God, I mean, within a few weeks, I saw my work, just keep going up in terms of what I was painting. What I was painting in 1978 and 79, by 1980, I could already see, and I think people looking at my work at that time could see the advancement of it, that just gotten better. My sense of values, my drawing, this sense of believability about the painting, and that too, painting as much as you can. I know a lot of people have jobs, they can't be. That was another reason why I quit everything. Is I don't think I could do this and go to work for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and then do what I want to do with it. So
and that is a problem.
But not everybody can do that, and so painting as much as you can. Even I remember I took a drawing class from James Moore, the artist I got to know and still good friends, in 1979 at the community college up here, and he is a remarkable draftsman, and drawing in his class and then doing it afterwards and bringing things in, and he would talk about them. But I just remember him saying, if you even just drew 20 minutes a day, in a month you're going to see improvement. And a month after that, you're going to see improvement. And a month after that, of just trying to keep yourself with your hand in it. This makes a world of difference.
Just a little bit of work over time goes a long way. Just like playing an instrument, like the guitar.
Exactly. I mean, I play the saxophone, and I started it. I bought one on my 40th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And always wanted to play. And I have a good time with it, but I always found it a lot more, lack of a better word, kind of unnatural to me in terms of painting. Always felt natural. Some reason things made sense to me, and I could look at a friend's painting that was really good and garner a lot from it. I could look at a master at the museum, and every time I came back from the museum, it felt like my paintings elevated a bit from what they were before. Looking at that artist's work and kind of in your head studying it or doing sketches of it or whatever. But just keeping your hand in it,
going.
keep that
keep it going little by little is something that you would.
And even, I mean, not everybody has the ambition to do it professionally or become a full-time artist.
There's a lot of people love the joy of it.
Yeah. And want to do it. And that's fine.
I think there could be joy both ways. And, it's, you got to figure out what works for you. But, you were definitely struck with this real strong artistic vision. So I think it's amazing that you had the courage and the fortitude to, quit the job and dedicate yourself to it. Because a lot of people do find that's a problem. They're balancing their work life and they're trying to, master painting. And it can be hard to become a master at both,
Yeah. And, and I was lucky at the time. I wasn't committed in any relationships. I didn't have children, none of those things. It was just that I had to worry about. And it was inexpensive to
It,
live then.
it
I don't think, the cost of living and wages and all that haven't risen together. And so, up until the late 80s, I seriously never paid more than $150 a month for
wow,
rent of a
that
home.
sounds good
And I
right
had
now.
studios $100. And so I could sell a painting or two, make $300-400 in a month and make it squeeze
Yeah,
by. I never had a bank account for sure. I wasn't making any money, and it was until it was 1989 where things started to take off for
yeah,
me. So I'd been painting full time since
okay.
'75. So in '89 was the first year I felt like I was part of the middle
Oh
class, so to
wow,
speak. I was making it. We bought a house, and we've lived in that house since then. And I always gauge this idea to me is how well I've done is that we've never missed a house
that's
payment, and I never had to borrow money from somebody to make a
yeah,
house payment. So, I've been fortunate. I've had a lot of good connections over the years. I've, it's just weird the things that have come
yeah,
my way, and part of my brain thinks is it's that commitment I made to do this thing, and I have sensed that other people throughout my life have seen and know that commitment. I had an artist friend gave me an apartment upstairs of his house and said, "Well, give me a painting once a
oh
month."
wow,
And just different things
yeah,
like that
just coming together.
that have made those early years in particular survivable
Yeah,
for me. Uh, and
yeah,
anyway,
no,
so
I think it's incredible how things come together and just kind of a path opens, and it's like almost like you're meant to follow that path. And
exactly. You know, my wife Terry, also a fabulous artist. We met in '84 and we got married in
mm,
'88. And when we got married, it was weird. Like this thing clicked in my head that, and I grew up in that era of this sort of thinking that I'm trying to think how to put it. Like really good art out there, nobody understands it. It
right,
doesn't sell. Oh God, you're painting landscapes and stuff. You do those because
yeah,
they sell. I'm going, God, why do I have 600
yeah,
landscapes in my studio if they sell?
yeah,
Uh, but that idea ingrained that you had to be this kind of artist that was just so out there that nobody understood your work,
yeah,
and that in time people might see it, might
yeah,
know it, but it was sort of this thing that kept me from feeling good about selling
huh?
artwork.
It's like an
Which is a
anti-establishment
weird
type.
thing. But when Terry and I got married, and there was this life commitment to this person, this person I loved, and this person who was also an
Right.
artist, this thing clicked in my head that I went, you know what? It's okay to sell
Yeah.
artwork. It's okay to make a living, a decent living as an artist. And I'm not saying that's what changed things, but things were different
Huh.
from then on,
Hmm.
in terms of making more connections with good galleries, people buying the work, people commissioning things, people wanting the
Yeah.
work. It just, I felt like my attitude
Yeah.
shifted, and that attitude was hugely beneficial to me in pursuing a life as a
Yeah.
painter.
Yeah. That's amazing how that happens. If sometimes our attitude changes, and um, we don't think it's a direct result, but things just start to click into place where
Right.
we start to go, okay, well, maybe I could just go a little further down the path and a little further, and the next thing you know, you've been doing, you're doing better than you thought. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. No, it's true. And I often put I'm in the right place at the right time, and luck plays a role in it, but also, being committed to
Yeah.
what you're doing and doing the things necessary to get the work out there in the
Yeah,
world.
and your work, I
So,
mean, working for so many years at dedicating yourself to something like that. And so you were saying it's 14 years in really before things started to become financially, less of just getting by, and you were able to 1989. What happened in 1989 that changed everything for you?
well, I started working with a gallery up here. He only had his gallery for about 3 years, but he was the first person to own a gallery up here that that sold a lot of not only my work but other artists that he sold that he had in
Yeah.
the gallery. Wife showed there selling her work. He had this. He had more of a kind of almost like a big city gallery
Yeah.
mindset. And he grew up with art. He grew up in a family that appreciated and loved art. He was a very brilliant man. And he knew how to talk to people about art, and he knew how to talk to people about spending money on art. And I think galleries I worked with before that were up here, I did sell some work through them, but the whole money issue gets, it just kind of can play a weird role with people who are uncomfortable telling a potential buyer that the painting they're buying for $2,500, $500, $5,000, whatever it might be, is worth that. And this dealer was able to do that.
Yeah.
And then he introduced me to a gallery that I showed with for a while in Palm Springs, the Elaine Horwich galleries. She was pretty big back then. She passed away, and her gallery's around anymore. And through that, and through him, I connected with a designer down that way that was buying my work to put into homes he was designing. I had an art professor here at the community college, Floyd Batiga, that introduced me to a gallery director in San Francisco at Guns, which was a big department store, but up on the third floor, I think it was, they had a beautiful gallery, and they really good work. And they did well with my work. And then somebody bought in 93, or 92, bought by another corporation, and so things were changing. And I approached a gallery at the time called Contemporary Realist Gallery, and they were in San Francisco, and I loved the work they showed. It was all representational painting and high-end stuff, good stuff. And I thought, well, I'm going to write Michael Hackett, the owner, and he'll be the first and only gallery I contact. If he's not interested, I'll go looking elsewhere. Well, he was, and he took my and him and Tracy Friedman ran it, and then they moved their gallery space from the place they were in to a bigger space, and then even a bigger space. And I was with them 10 years until they changed their focus with not showing contemporary people, but showing kind of more blue chip work, the deceased artists, a lot of Bay Area, no longer. Anyway, they wanted to do an exclusive with my work in California, and I wasn't so sure I wanted to do that. And I said I need to think about it. And they, they kept showing my work and selling my work, and they brought it up again and basically asked me, how much money do you need to live per year? And I gave them a figure, and they said, we can do that. And they did for 10 years, that and better. And one of the first sales I had with them was a painting that was priced at $1,000. And I got a check for like $1,100 from them when it sold. And so I call them up. I said, I think you made a mistake. That painting was $1,000. And well, your prices are too low. We raised the prices. So they were a gallery that started bringing my prices up more and taking work to art fairs throughout the country. I had 3 one-person shows there and a couple of group shows. but they really got my work on the map, so to speak, in a broader way. So yeah, though, I mean, that's kind of a long way, and it went further than 1989, but all that stuff seemed to start in 1989, where I was starting to get good connections away from Humboldt County. Humboldt County is a great place, and I do sell work here, but it's if a person wants to make a living doing art, you need to branch out.
And that's amazing that you were able to do it, and at that time. I mean, now we have the internet and things like this where we could do a virtual podcast or sell it online, but back then, to be able to spread out from Humboldt in such a way where you didn't have, the communication networks and everything like we do today, that's even more impressive, really, I think.
Yeah, well, it was great. And when I was working with Hackett Friedman on an exclusive level, it was the most beautiful relationship I've ever had with the gallery.
They just paid
and I
you
only
for the
had
year, huh?
only one gallery to work with, only one personality to deal with. And, now we're doing about 9 or 10 galleries.
Yeah.
So, which is great too. And I'm very happy with the galleries I show with, and it's, it spreads the work out more. And if somebody isn't selling something, maybe somebody else is. But that 10-year experience is like nothing I'll probably see again, or not too many artists who see that. But
I've never heard of it. That's a really cool thing. I think a lot of people, I know I'm inspired as a plein air painter to even hear that, a gallery was willing to ask you how much you need to live and then give you even a little bit more than that. And that's, that's peace of mind as an artist, where you're kind of an entrepreneur at the same time as, trying to really work passionately on your work and get your work better. So that's
and the great thing about them is they weren't a kind of gallery that said, this is what we want. They were always open to whatever I was working on and brought down there. And I would send them photographs of the painting and that I was working on. And then when I delivered it, he'd tell me, we've already sold it. I'd be like, oh my God, how does that? So that was, there wasn't that thing where, oh my God, I've got to do, I got to do more of those paintings of the palm trees, or more of those paintings of still life or whatever. So anyway,
so you had artistic freedom and financial freedom. So that was definitely a good situation.
I did commissions with them too for their clients. I did a number of those over the years, and so in that sense, you're there's a little less artistic freedom, but they always like if I did a still life commission, I would do a little study and send it to the gallery, and they'd show the client the study, and then that looks great. Recently, the client just said, we love what you do with the rugs and everything. So just something this size is what we want, and we like a certain flower. On that particular one of the commissions I did, it was a large one. It was 48 by 72 inches. Still,
wow.
And
very big.
The little study, it was a big bunch of roses on a table and other objects and stuff, and the rug, and I sent them the study, and they loved it. And then when I went to do the big painting, the roses didn't feel right to me, and so I changed them to rhododendrons that we had in our yard, bigger flower, bigger bunches of. They just felt. I didn't tell them. I just did it, and anyway, long story short, they loved the painting. So I'm getting a primo spot in there. So anyway, so people can be pretty flexible with things.
That's
too.
Good too.
I think when the artist lets people know, hey, I think this is a better idea.
And the end result maybe spoke
not.
for itself, that you didn't have to do any more convincing.
I think so. And I just told them this is what I want to do. They may have discouraged me from doing it. So
they might have demanded the roses, but when they saw it, they loved it. So
they loved
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting and inspiring. I mean, to hear your story of how you really established yourself up there and Humboldt, and even today, I mean, such an influential and just great ambassador for art. And I guess moving more towards your paintings itself and what you're hoping to capture in your work. I know that atmosphere is something really important to you that you like to capture, and maybe our listeners might want to understand that a little bit better.
Yeah, atmosphere, spatial quality, that is, other than, I want my drawing to feel right and all that stuff, to have a believability about it. That atmospheric thing, I just find so fascinating. And probably being that I live up here in the north coast of California, it's a lot more apparent because we just get
the fog.
Even more. We get a lot of sunny days, but even the sunny days have a really wonderful atmospheric quality about them. It's not like you're up, in the mountains where the air is just thinner and you're not getting that atmosphere. But here, and so I kind of, when I got into still life painting, which really happened in 1983 is when I got very interested in still life. I did a little bit before that, but I lived in Wyoming for a year.
Wow.
And because of the weather out there, I started doing a lot of indoor still lifes in the winter. And anyway, I wanted to bring that atmosphere into the studio as well. And so when I'm painting indoors, even though it's a much closer space, I'm still very aware, very keen on the atmosphere within the room and playing with that spatial stuff. That's a lot more important to me than painting a highly rendered vase or flower. I kind of go for a more overall effect, I think. I mean, I love painting flowers. In fact, I almost can't imagine doing a still life without flowers in it. And that probably came from our garden when we bought this house, and just bringing those indoors. And when we got married in '88, the best man gave me an amaryllis, and I'd never seen one before that I remembered. And so I did a painting of that amaryllis in 1988, and then have done one every year since. So bringing the flower in, to me, kind of brought a bit of the landscape inside. And I think I paint a pretty good flower, but I think there's artists out there that just do remarkable flower paintings. And I think there's a little more focus on that flower, where I think I'm thinking more of an overall effect of room and all the objects, and trying to get this connection and this feeling of air floating around the room.
The space between the painter and the artist and the subject.
And so I think value is probably the key to that, of really, really paying attention to your values. And I do a lot of squinting, when I'm painting something artists always tell one to do. And so just really, really reading those values, and not painting something. Often people in still life painting, it's like this dark background in order to bring out the objects. And I've done some myself, but I really like the idea of trying to paint a light background against the objects, and those grayish tints that happen in the background. And creating that sense of atmosphere. Vermeer was probably the one that really influenced me early on. His interior paintings,
incredible.
The way he dealt with space. and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was going to say the middle values too are probably really important when you're trying to. And those are the most challenging to see the difference. When I paint, I mean, the most challenging to see the differences.
No, they are, and I when I start painting, I'm often painting in those middle tones and values, and then when I get that set a bit, I start pushing the darks back more, and then pulling it out more. I find for me, if I've got those middle values working well, I can see better what's going to go on with the light values and the dark
extreme
values.
Yeah, it makes sense because you're kind of establishing that middle, and then you can work on the extremes in either direction and kind of pull it to the level that you want. Do you do a lot of value studies anymore, or do you just kind of paintings are your value studies?
The paintings are, I rarely do anything like that. In fact, it's funny. I know they're important, and I know that a lot of artists do them, and I think they're a great thing to do. But I've never done a thumbnail sketch out on the landscape. And so I think I have too much nervous energy.
Yeah, you just want to get going.
There. I want to jump into it, and I start fairly thinly, kind of like the demo I did in the magazine, and just sort of feeling my way with it. And if I have to shift something, I can shift it. I haven't made a great commitment in that beginning part, so standing there for 5 or 10 minutes doing a little value sketch of my scene, it seems like
torture.
I don't know why. I just always go, that's time. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I mean, I love drawing for drawing's sake.
Yeah.
But so I know, and it always seemed to me, I might be wrong about this, but most of the artists, and some artists teach that, so people students are taking it home with them and using it. But I found that most of the artists I've known over time that do the thumbnail sketches come from an illustrator's background.
Yeah.
Because that's something, you're designing something, and you got to get that right.
Right.
I always just
I find with the illustrator background too, and they're amazing draftsmen and all, but sometimes they have a little difficulty with being tight, and they want to get like a looser, more painterly effect, and sometimes that's hard for people that have a big illustration background.
Well, yeah.
Although
I do know some that have broken away from that and have a very painterly, beautiful.
Yeah.
But I just even in the beginning, I mean, my first landscape outdoors I painted was in 1973, and it was like 24 by 30 inches, and I went down to Laguna Beach with a friend and just into it. I still have that thing in a pile of old paintings, kind of a reminder to myself. And I've even used it when I did a presentation a few years back, showing it to people, saying, I just want to show you, where I came from in the beginning. I wasn't painting like what you look at now. And I'm not showing you this because I think it's a good painting. I'm just showing, we all start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably a powerful thing for people to remember, especially seeing where you're at now in your career and just the work you're putting out, and to know that, you had to start at the same place that everyone does, So I think that will.
Yeah. A lot of people that do art were drawing as a kid, or maybe doing some painting as a kid. I know George Van Hook's been, he probably had a pencil in his crib. But he's been drawing and painting his whole life.
Yeah.
And it's something that was very clear to me when I saw George's work in the beginning. I was really, really impressed. And
nice guy too.
George is great.
Guys, yeah.
we had some dynamite times together back in those.
That's awesome.
But anyway, yeah, I think that I always tell people at the workshops I've done is fear has no place in when you're painting. I mean, there might be things to be fearful in life, but damn it, just go for it. If you think something doesn't feel right, get rid of it. If you want to change something, but don't be timid with it. And I'm a little over the top the other way of not being timid, and I have a hard time slowing the process down, but I do. I get to a point in the painting where I sit back, I'm really thinking about it, and maybe I go up and make a couple of strokes. But I like all that energy and excitement. It's just in that beginning process, that first few hours, or if I'm just doing a painting in 2-3 hours of just painting. And I think something that I say now a little bit about myself is I've always been a pretty intuitive painter, and that's where I say I don't think that the thumbnail sketch came into my thinking process. It was just like, well, there's a scene, that's dark, that's light, there's color there, boom, I'm gonna jump into it. So I've always been an intuitive painter, and now I'm at a point where I want to be even more intuitive. I kind of say I'm trying to get out of my way and not rely on things I know I can do to make something work, but see what I might be able to discover by pushing myself a little bit and trying to get beyond whatever confines one might put on themselves with painting a landscape or painting a still life. And again, I want to lean towards a little more of that kind of expression I feel within myself of getting that more into the paintings I'm doing, and I'm not worrying so much about correctness, exactness, or whatever you might call it, but I feel like I've always kind of gone from my gut and my emotions, but I think as I've aged, and as various things in life that affect a person, I just want that more.
Yeah, to just be totally instinctual when you paint and just reacting to the moment.
And of course, all the knowledge you have that
comes
built
into
up to that point.
And maybe you're untapping even more of that creative potential by not thinking about it as much and just letting all the years of experience and your emotions and everything kind of lead the way for you.
Right.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And
it comes across in your paintings. It really does. That that passion and that kind of just go for it attitude, but it's done, you can tell, with such a level of skill and draftsmanship and just such a unique perspective.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, I'd find every painting has some problem in it along the way. It's rare for me to do a painting that just signed. That's where it's like there's this problem that arises, and that thing of the intuition and like trying to let go of that control a bit. I kind of say it's like, feels like you're standing on the edge of a cliff that you might fall off the cliff and lose everything, and you catch your balance and there it is. It's working. So I like that kind of, I like jumping into the unknown a bit, and but again, you're using years of experience and knowledge. It's a lot different than jumping into the unknown when you're just starting to paint.
Right. Like I know exactly. I mean, I feel like I know what you're talking about, because I'll have paintings I had paintings that I couldn't get it to read right. The way I wanted it to read with the light effect, it didn't feel believable or legitimate or anything like that. And I might not be able to fix it on my own, but once I started getting mentoring, and I would be shown how to fix it, like, oh, you could do that, and it works. Okay, I could just start over here instead of trying to make something that's not working work. I feel like that's like a big aha moment where you're able to just kind of stand on the edge and then overcome it, and that takes a little time, but I know you're probably very used to doing it.
No, it does take a lot of time, and I have paintings sometimes that I think really work, and a year or two later, I don't think it works, or I feel like it's better. It's just sitting there. It's it's like, oh yeah, it's painting, but what can I do to anyway? So I screw up a lot of paintings too, and mess later, but I also think I come up with some that carried it to a different point. Although sometimes when I've done that, I come across a photo later of what it was, and I kind of, oh, was that a wise thing for me to do? Maybe it was a good thing, but
you kind of.
I say, don't be afraid. Just
and that brings up an interesting question: is like when do you decide to call it quits on a painting? For yourself personally, because I know a lot of painters probably struggle with that question. They want to keep fixing things, but then they look fixed instead of better, maybe, or maybe they are really improving it. It's kind of a head game to try to figure out when to finish a painting.
It is, and sometimes it just says it to me. It just goes, you know what? I can't put another stroke on there that's going to make this better. But often it's that ending part is a slow process of spending some time with the painting. I just took 10 paintings, I think it is, up to Joseph Wilhelm that does some photography for me. So I pick paintings out here and there that I want to get a higher end photo done. And one of them was the latest one I painted and I did a post of it, of the apple tree in our yard. And it's a good size painting, 30 by 40. And when I thought it was done, the next day I said, no, it's not. It's a time away from it and you walk in fresh. And so I took it out on the scene one more time, but then I spent time in the studio just making adjustments. How is this reading? What is my eye moving through it okay? Do I have enough punch where I want it? And so I think I finally got it there, but even at that, I was still kind of like, I think it's done. So sometimes I'm just not completely sure. But there's another painting I just took to him to photograph, a bigger one. I think it's 40 by 54 tall, 40 wide or 48 wide. And it's a big interior here in my studio, and I'm reflected in the mirror. And I've worked on that for a year and a half off and on. And my wife, Terry, was in it at one time, and I ended up painting her out, and I put an amaryllis plant in it because I just wasn't making the figure work. Everything I tried was one of those things, to me, just made it worse. Wow. She just felt cramped in it. I said, it's not, the painting isn't breathing. Yeah. So I just took that to him, but God, Michael, I would pull that out, every couple of months and put it on the easel. I'd see things, I still had set up, and I would just do changes, and then I would just do some changes in what I thought the painting needed, just how's it read? I want to adjust that bow. It didn't matter whether I looked at the scene. Yeah. Well, anyway, I felt good that one I did sign, and it's complete, and it felt good to take it to Joseph to get a photograph. It's
funny how some were glad we came back to, and some were like, oh man, I should have never touched it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's true.
I guess even as late into your career, sometimes you can still feel that way. So that's kind of comforting to all of us.
Oh, it is. No, it's very true. And I have my own insecurities about my work. I wonder if a lot of artists do. But I mean, I can love it
Yeah.
and hate it, and I can feel good about it and feel lousy
Yeah.
about it. I can happy. I can be
Yeah.
depressed.
Can have both
Um,
emotions at the same
and
time for sure.
yeah,
It's weird how
so
that works.
it is, and and I have conversations with myself when I paint, and sometimes I swear to God, I mean, not sometimes, a lot of the times I say, you don't know what the hell you're doing, and like I'm like, why is this not working? Why am I not,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and I for the most part break through that and make it
Yeah.
work, but I mean, you're not all I don't like the idea of following a certain formula or
Yeah.
patterns in terms of painting, because I could fall back on things and go, well, I know this will work, that'll work. But when you're really trying to um, push yourself a bit and just maybe make a little bit of a discovery, maybe do something. It's not that you're doing something greatly
Right.
different. I think most of the differences most of us artists do are rather
Yeah.
subtle, but they're there. And once in a while, you do something completely out of left
Yeah.
field that is very different. But people ask me, well, has your work changed over the years? And I don't think it's really changed, but it is different.
Evolved.
And
Yeah. It's grown.
it's a subtle thing. And I think overall it's much better than it was 20 years
Yeah.
ago and 10 years ago, 30 years ago. But every once in a while, I'll see a painting I did that has sold, and maybe I'm at the person's house and I get to see it, or I come across a photograph and it's from 25 years ago, and I'll look at it and go, you know what? I couldn't paint that any better than I'm painting now. It just
It just works
just
for that
works.
painting.
Sometimes I see a painting from 25, 30 years ago and I cringe. I go, oh my God, they should let me have that and fix it up. But yeah, so I think a good painting is a good painting is a good
Yeah.
painting. And it's like, someone might say, well, God, you paint so much better now than you did 30 years ago. And there's a lot of truth to
Right.
that. But I tend to look at it as just subtle changes that have evolved over
Yeah.
time. But there are paintings that are painted different in a way than how you paint now. But could I make it better? I don't really think I could. It would just be
Right.
different.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and when you look at an artist's career, you look at different periods of their painting. It's maybe in
Right.
terms of like skill level, some are better and some are worse, but maybe, something of your earlier work reflected that time period for, in your life.
Right.
And later time period is reflecting something different. So I think they hold value in their own way, maybe.
I
Yeah.
think so. And they're all part of your growth and your development and your experience as a painter.
Absolutely.
To me, that's the ultimate thing of painting is the act of
Yeah.
doing it and pushing that paint around. And I mean, my God, that's what got me in the beginning, was just the way that looked on the canvas and how good that
Yeah.
felt, and the smell of the oil
Yeah.
paint, all of those.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's a very tactile thing, and you can really, get into the whole process of it, especially with the plein air painting. There's so much energy. People think it's kind of like a passive activity, but if you're out there plein air painting, it's it's a lot of mental and physical work that goes into it, backing up, coming close, getting in there.
really, it
Yeah.
really is. Yep.
But it's almost a
And
whole
once in a while-
experience on its own. In plein air, and then studio is different. So one question I would have is, do you approach like still lifes in your studio different than plein air, or like you said, you try to bring the atmosphere inside? But are there things that you address differently?
The process is, because people have always said for years that my still lives felt lack of a better term, more realistic than the
Yeah.
landscapes. And I've always said, well, you're with a still life, you're dealing with something
Right.
close to you. You're in a more confined
Right.
space. With the landscape, if I was to paint, say, a detail on trees in the middle ground, in the way I maybe painted a little detail on that rug or something, I feel it wouldn't be as effective in terms of creating a sense of space and
Yeah.
atmosphere and everything. But I approach them in the beginning very much
Mhm.
the same. But I think as the painting builds up, there becomes a process where I spend quite a bit of time just working back over things, building
Yeah.
up. Like if I'm working on a painting with a carpet in it, building up that pattern and that textural quality of
Yeah.
it. Well, I tend to slow down a bit more, and then I've got, rather than having 2 hours outdoors of semi-consistent light, I can be indoors for 5, 6, 7, 8,
Yeah.
9 hours, whatever, where I'm getting a more consistent light.
Right.
So the whole process, and it always feels more intimate. I am trying to bring, and I have done that in a number of my still lifes, bring more of that kind of energy and quality of how I apply the paint on landscape painting into
Right.
my still life. I think I'm doing that more now. In the pieces I was doing back in the late 80s and 90s, I was painting a little bit thinner with the paint, still using good amount of paint, and using a lot more medium. And now I'm painting more with just paint, hardly
Yeah.
any medium, maybe a little bit started, and building up more of a textural quality with
Huh.
it, which is what I'll
Like
do
some
with
of
that.
would
So-
you wouldn't say impasto
Yeah,
or just a texture?
Really more of an impasto, more just
Yeah.
paint quality, and more of a sense that this was definitely a
Yes.
painting. That I'm not trying to create that illusion of reality in the sense of the objects
Right.
I'm painting. And this winter, in my head, I have a lot of ideas I want to try in the studio that I'm very curious to see where I go with this. So I'll in 4 months' time, hopefully I'll have some works that are
Yeah.
all about that process and
Ye-
painting the interior of my studio and so
Maybe
forth.
it's better to ask you after you're done, but what are some of the new thoughts you have about the way you want to approach the work that you're excited about?
Well, it has to do with landscape painting a bit, and as I was saying, trying to incorporate a little more of that painting process into how I'm dealing with the
Yeah.
still life. I want to paint. I have a fairly good sized studio. It's about 450 square feet. It's
Yeah.
not gigantic, but it's
Yeah.
size. And I want to paint, and I've done it before, but I want to approach it a little bit different now, of using the bigger space and stuff going on around in the studio, as well as I'll set some flowers up.
Yeah.
I know, incorporating those flowers within the
Yeah.
space and sense of my studio, and just trying to push the depth back
Yeah.
even more, trying to get more atmospheric
Huh.
with things, and more painterly.
Yeah.
I think is what that's in my mind now. Saying that, I might turn around and do the opposite.
And
But no,
that's
so
yeah, that's the interesting thing. You never know how quite how the ideas are going to turn out, but they're
Yeah.
fun. It's a fun
Yeah,
try.
I try not to hold myself to my thoughts too much.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I mean, I like the idea of thinking about how I want to approach something, and sort of planning a painting, but also so many times when I plan something, I start with that plan, and then it kind of becomes
Yeah.
something else, and I think that probably happens to a lot of people, a lot of
Right.
painters, and I'm fine with that. I don't like restricting myself to any method of
Yeah.
operation. I'm open. Life is full of surprises, good ones,
Right.
bad ones, and I love
Yeah.
surprise. That was one of the things I always have loved about my wife's work is she constantly will surprise me with something that she's working on. I won't see it for a few days, and I just love that
Yeah.
about art. You know that I like things when they're a bit unpredictable,
Yeah.
as life is. You know, and I like things that are imperfect, uh, and that show the warts of
Yeah.
life, so to speak.
Yeah, and I did want to talk
And
about
so,
that too.
so I don't. Yeah, I'm not looking for an idealized type thing. I want some of that in the work. I want the beauty in the work, but I also want it to feel
Right.
honest, and this is how I
Right.
see life.
Right. Yeah. Well, that makes total sense. Yeah. And like you said, this surprising things are sometimes, the best things. It could end up being the best thing about it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
and then I was going to ask, what is your palette like? Do you generally use a limited palette, or do you use a wide variety of colors?
Here, I'll grab it right now.
Well, that'll help people. I'm interested to see it. I know that.
I don't know how well you can see. I got some medium in that cup, but I've got cad red up here, alizarin crimson. I use a little bit of cobalt violet, transparent red oxide, Naples yellow, a nice warm cad yellow, and a lemon yellow, ultramarine blue. That's not on I used it up, but cobalt blue, beryllium blue, and this is some King's blue. And then I've got titanium white here, and I also use flake white, particularly indoors a lot, but I've been using it in landscape painting too. I really like, and they're out of stock at Jerry's, but I like flake white.
Oh,
quite
really?
a bit.
I've never used flake white.
It's it is toxic, but I'm careful with it, and I just it doesn't. Titanium can really overpower some of the mixtures,
really cool it.
So and flake has a little more transparency to it, a little more warmth, and I just think there's a beauty about it that I like, and I'll combine the two, and sometimes I don't use it at all. I don't think I used it when I was painting the Laguna Plein Air.
Oh, okay.
I was just down at.
Yeah, and you were just at the Laguna Plein Air, which is congratulations on that. That's such a great event, and
it is
to just be involved in it.
Great place. And also, my very first plein air painting was at Laguna Beach.
Yeah,
it has
and it wasn't in competition though. It was just you just drove down the Laguna.
No, just went there with a friend and painted.
Isn't that
down
funny
there.
how the very first event? That's funny how the very first plein air painting you made, and then that becomes one of.
Yeah, and it's the first event I participated in, plein air event. In 2015, I think it was. So yeah, it's cool. I love it down there. It's a great place.
Yeah, you had some great work come out of that event. I encourage anyone to go on your website if you want to give that to the viewers, or your Instagram.
Yeah, I haven't. Let me move this up a little. I haven't put those on the website yet, but my website is jimmcvickerpaints.com. www.jimmcvickerpaints.com. And then I've got my Facebook page, and then McVicker Paints, I think, is my Instagram at your paints. Yeah.
And you can,
So I put generally things I'm working on, or once in a while things I get back, I'll pop them up on Facebook and Instagram. I probably do Facebook more, although you can do them both together. I tend to, for the most part, get more viewers on Facebook than I do on Instagram, even though I got a ton of followers. I don't understand how it all works. But
I think there's a difference for sure, but I guess it's a little bit different for everybody. But I know Facebook is big in the art community because it's just been so well established, a little longer than Instagram has. So, but so that'd be great. People can find all your artwork there. And so you said you're excited for the winter for your studio works, and what else do you have coming up on your event calendar and that people might want to know about?
Well, I'm going to be doing Borrego plein air, Borrego Spring in March. It's the first time I'll be going there. She's invited me for years, and it just hasn't been in the cards. So down
That's
down
great.
to that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Probably do a couple of local workshops next year. I mean, I've been doing one every year at the Morris Graves property in September, and it's a landscape one. But I the last few years I've done a still life workshop locally. My workshops and all that are probably from here on out going to just be local. I'm not interested in doing the travel and stuff. It's just I really want to focus on my work and just keeping myself sane. And then same with plein air events. Lagoon is pretty much the only one I'll do anymore.
Really?
Except going to go to Borrego. It got to a point where I was bouncing around too much, and it just it's funny, the whole COVID situation, the lockdown got me back to a place I used to be, and I love being back there.
Yeah, it's kind of the place where you could just focus on your art and your growth as an artist and the things you want to try to do, like you mentioned in the studio this winter, and definitely can't wait to see those pieces. And it was great talking with you today, Jim, and it was so great to hear about your history and how you stepped out on your own and established this wonderful life as a painter. And your works are inspirational. I'm sure everyone who's hearing this is going to be just thrilled to learn all about it.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you. It's been I've been very fortunate, and I'm very grateful for everything that's come my way. So,
well, thank you, Jim. I really appreciate having you on. It's been an absolute pleasure. And once again, you can go to jimmcvicker.com, right, for to look at Jim's artwork, or on Instagram.
Yeah, Jim McVicker Paints.
JimMcVickerPaints.com.
Or even just Googling my name.
Yeah,
it comes
just Google
up,
his name.
So.
You know who he is. He's one of the great artists of our time, in my opinion. So, Jim, it's been great having you on. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
Okay, see you again soon. Have a great day.
You too. All right. Bye-bye.